Today is Tuesday, December 6th, 2022. And we're going to have our virtual appointment with the new fertility doctor. See how it goes. See what she got to say. I'm kind of excited to have a female instead of
a creepy doctor.
Okay.
Did you ever get like labs on day 3 of your cycle? Does that sound familiar, Malia? Like FSH and estrogen levels?
That was the one. I only did it one time when he said he thought I was early menopause. I think that's the only 3-day one I've had. The other ones were like
The baselines.
the baselines, yeah, baselines before I started Clomid to make sure I didn't have any.
Family history, Malia, of like premature menopause or issues there that you know of?
My mom, I don't think she didn't have early menopause or anything, but she did struggle to get pregnant with me, but she was she was the same age as me.
Yeah.
So she and my dad struggled for a while.
Whenever I see, so AMH, I'm just going to educate from where I would start here. I don't know what y'all know, we'll just go from there. But AMH generally is between 1 and 3.
Right.
And as we move through our 30s, it drops, for most women. But that's a pretty low AMH for your age. I would not expect it to be as low as that.
Right.
Okay. And so when I see values like that, there's a part of me that's like, why is your AMH so low, right? Mm-hmm. Is it genetic that you're just kind of early losing that egg count? Or is there some other health factor that's going on? Or sometimes we see that in diseases like endometriosis, which is an inflammatory disease of the pelvis. Mm-hmm. That usually causes crampy periods as well. That's kind of why I'm screening that. It's probably one of the more common reasons why I see younger patients have an early decline in egg yield. Mm-hmm. Okay. What we know is that AMH doesn't predict ability to get pregnant in multiple studies. But it does affect kind of how much I can help you by getting you to most of the stuff that I do in reproductive assistance involves trying to get you to ovulate more than one egg to get the numbers on our favor. And it does influence that if you're not putting out very many eggs each month.
Right.
And make it harder to respond to medications and having more canceled cycles and probably more cysts when you're trying to start and just getting really, really frustrating. It does that. And so I think, obviously it's a unique situation because we've got another egg source that we could be talking about using and trying to make decisions there, but it doesn't change your fertility with your eggs and kind of how far we're willing to go and what we wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
So my initial thought is, I'd like to see what just a random FSH and estradiol level are on you, because that's telling me at baseline your brain, your ovaries should be like, okay, we haven't started growing a follicle yet. Sometimes at that baseline, we find that your brain is yelling at your ovaries and they're just not naturally responding, and that's a little bit more concerning about really having success. If that FSH level has gone up, if that is a sign that we're kind of in that transition to your brain is freaking out that your ovary count is low. And that gives us a little bit more pause about can we really get success even, by trying these things. And the other thing to keep in mind is that just human reproduction in general is not that efficient. And then when we successfully get you to ovulate and provide sperm at the same time, our ability to conceive is probably about 15% per month, best case. 1.5. So, part of me when I hear okay, well, we tried 2 IUIs and failed, I'm not
yeah. I'm
just okay, well, you had 2 15% chances at something and didn't work. So I think there's a part of this in kind of some of this just maybe statistics. And then the other part of it is kind of, but what is the best way forward? Knowing those statistics and knowing what success rates are and knowing that it's been a bit of a journey so far for both of you, of figuring out, I think getting the polyps out was a good thing. That's going to be helpful. But kind of figuring out what is the best case scenario moving forward.
Right.
Because often is not uncommon at all in my patients in whom we are requiring use of donor sperm, which is not cheap
Yeah.
in general, because of those 15% success rate just isn't good enough.
Yeah.
It's just not good enough to justify the cost of the sperm and the ultrasounds, and the Femara is cheap, but the rest of it isn't.
Yeah.
And so it's not uncommon that even though there's nothing wrong, there's clearly something wrong with that AMH, and we can figure that out. But when there's nothing else wrong, that we end up talking about things like IVF way earlier, because we start talking like 50-60% chance per embryo that we make and stuff like that. And part of me hearing this is wondering, like, do we want to talk about something like, Holly, you doing IVF and transferring to Malia and having her be able to be pregnant with, and doing like a reciprocal IVF so that we bring you both back into this whole process of child making.
Yeah.
And kind of opening up those doors too, maybe.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's something I consider. If it's like a waste of, our time, or like we've already spent so much money, and it's like, if I had known, I didn't know any of the statistics, he didn't discuss that with us, like, he was like, I asked him, am I wasting my time doing these, am I wasting my time and my money, and he was like, no, I mean, we'll try, and we've already spent like almost what we would spend on one IVF cycle just for all this failed, so like, I just want to know what my best option is, so I stop wasting, like, I need the best, whatever you think is the best thing, to do, I want to try that.
Knowing what your AMH is, if you're going like, what's the easier route to go, I definitely think it's looking at using Holly's eggs.
Okay.
Because we're going to be able to get more.
Right.
But I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with your uterus. That egg, the uterus and the ovaries are like two totally different organs.
Yeah.
And just because your egg yield is low doesn't mean your uterus doesn't work. Okay. That's where the endo thing, like maybe there's inflammation there that I need to be thinking about in the back of my mind in terms of guiding you both, but in terms of, there's part of me that maybe if we tried to do something like IVF and use your eggs and then transfer them to you, that gets you both part of this. And yet, but maybe with the best case outcomes.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you couldn't also, like, we couldn't transfer one to you and then transfer one to you and have you both be pregnant eventually.
Now that would be probably ideal.
Yeah,
that's
we
what
were trying to go at the same time. Like, I know it sounds crazy, but,
Yeah, that's crazy.
but our thought process was get it done and get the sleepless nights done all at once, get the terrible twos done all at once. Like, that's our thought, because we want to.
Yeah, that's not. Just saying. No judgment. Just saying. But I think if you're open to, we can do transfers whenever. Once we make embryos and we freeze them, we can do transfers whenever. Whether we do it now or we stagger 6 months or whatever that may be, or do like as soon as you deliver one, we do a transfer to you and you have 9 months in between or whatever that may be, or at the same time. That's me. We do that. But I think if you're, it is not I'm your like coach in this, right? It's not my decision to decide like how far we want to go towards something that the success rates may be low. Like, that's not my decision. I can just give you information about that it may be more difficult. And whether or not you want to do it, even though it's difficult, is not my decision. 100% y'all's. But if you're telling me, like, this has been a long road, we want the best case, but we want the best situation between now and having a baby, then I have to say using a partner who has more eggs is going to be probably our better option.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted. Like a straightforward, this is your best bet. Like, it's just what we weren't getting before. So thank you for that. Like, that's what I needed to hear.
Yeah, it's hard, but I do have to say that, like, knowing that you've tried to make some eggs and, you know, you kind of got there, but, you know, there's part of that that comes in that closure process, you know? Like, it's hard to go from, like, you haven't even tried to you can't have a kid. It is hard, and I'm not sure it's probably, like, you're probably more accepting of that now, having been through it, than you would have just been like, I've never even tried.
Yeah.
So give yourself a little grace in that, because I do think you're going to feel better moving forward knowing that you did try to some extent.
Yeah.
Holly, I'm saying that right?
Yeah.
What is your AMH, Holly?
I think it was like 5.74 or something like that.
Are your periods regular?
For the most part, yeah.
Y'all are like on the opposite scale of
I
everything
know.
here. You got too many, you don't have enough. You're gonna find meet in the middle. Like, where's Goldilocks when we need it? Alright. That makes me wonder if you have some underlying ovulatory dysfunction sometimes. That's almost like levels I see in PCOS. Which wouldn't cause any pain issues. Two
Right.
totally separate things. But it makes me wonder if you wouldn't benefit from like shutting your hormones down for a couple of months to see if there is some endometriosis, so we can cool it off a little bit. So sometimes what I'll do is like 2 months of suppression where we bring your estrogen levels way down and just see if that helps the pain.
Okay.
See if we can make it better, kind of as like a trial to see if it is more like an endo, like a peripheral implant somewhere that we can improve. And you haven't, so to me, and knowing you had an open myomectomy, we definitely would want to test your tubes. And you may have with that SIS, but we definitely would make your tubes open before you would continue doing inseminations, for example, because you could have some scarring from that surgery you had, and that would be affecting your fallopian tubes. So, what are your thoughts on Holly doing IVF and making embryos and then figuring out, transferring to one or both of you?
Yeah, I initially wasn't. I was like, nah, I'm not interested in carrying. Like, I just want carrying alone is not like enough for me. But the more we went through this process, I was like, I think it would be. It's something I need to experience. Like, it doesn't matter if it's my DNA or whatever. It's still ours. So, I'm more open to that just recently, actually. So.
There's a cool concept called maternal imprinting that I think is an interesting one too from a genetic standpoint, and that is that as humans we all have 2 copies of all of our genes on 2 sets of chromosomes, so we all have 2 different copies of all of our genes, and one comes from the biological egg and the other one comes from the biological sperm. But the determination of which genes get turned on and which of those genes get expressed and which ones don't expressed are actually determined by the carrying mom. Which kind of cool. So
Yeah.
you'd be kind of like, affecting actual gene expression in a baby, even if it wasn't your genes. So, that is a very personal decision on y'all's part in terms of, what you want to do there, but I think it could be, like you said, like part of feeling more of a part of everything and, experiencing that part of it. Although, it's not the most fun part of parenting.
Right.
Personal preference, but it is, something to think about. So you tell me, Malia, how much do you want me to continue looking at egg reserve on you and kind of reevaluating versus making a decision and moving forward?
I'd like to I'd like to do one more test, I guess, just to see
where we're at?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what I want you to do, Malia, is I want to get day 3 labs on you. So I want you to come just to my office on day 3 of your next period. Day 2, 3, or 4 is probably okay if it falls on the weekend.
Okay.
And I want to get that FSH, estrogen level, and AMH on you.
Okay.
And I'm going to grab a thyroid, vitamin D level too, just checking things.
Okay.
Probably an A1C because you have some family history of type 2 diabetes, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of doing a general screening there.
Okay.
And then Holly, and then I want you both to come for ultrasounds. Holly, I think your labs I can just do when you're here. You don't have to come in. I don't necessarily need day 3 labs from you.
Okay.
And then we'll get all of that, and you'll have a chance to talk to my financial counselors and look at things like that. And then we would do another telemedicine follow-up to kind of talk through specifics a little bit more, talk about whether or not we want to consider some hormonal suppression before we do IVF, just to see how you do with that, Holly.
Okay.
I think I generally, sometimes I'm worried about suppressing ovarian reserve by doing that, but yours is really high, so I think you would be fine.
Okay.
And I think a little bit interesting to see how you felt on it, to see if it helps or not.
That sounds good.
What questions do you have for me?
Gosh, a lot. None are coming to me. What does a timeline look like for we do the IVF for her, do an egg retrieval, and then after that, what is a timeline as far as embryo transfer, or if we have it, what does that look like?
Yeah. If we suppressed a couple months, we might be pushing for, off the actual retrieval for a month. But once we move forward, we would either be syncing you up in time with her IVF cycle and 5 days later doing the transfer.
Mm-hmm.
That's called fresh autologous IVF, fresh reciprocal IVF. Or we might be genetically testing the embryos and then freezing them, and then the transfer would be the next month.
Okay. And then when could, if we wanted to say go at the same time or a month off, whatever,
Yeah.
could she go? Is there any wait time for her after retrieval? Next cycle.
I mean, a month or two.
Yeah.
The next month or the month after.
Okay.
Do you know if you did carrier screening for genetic diseases like sickle cell, that kind of stuff?
I know they did something, but I don't know what all was screened for, because that's something we
Okay.
ran into initially. We're both CMV negative, and the initial
Okay.
donor we had was CMV positive, and then we found out the day before my IUI that we couldn't use him. That's the only thing that we know of for sure.
Yeah.
So we have actually even done a reversal on our policies on CMV positive and negative. Based on some data, and if you look at the sperm banks, they'll often have the same data. Basically, there's a theoretical risk of a CMV transmission, but it's largely thought to be theoretical. There really haven't been documented cases of CMV transmission and CMV babies from using CMV positive sperm in a CMV negative recipient.
Okay.
So we've changed our policy, especially in the wake of, it generally wasn't a problem, but in the wake of the pandemic and a shortage of sperm donors, it became a big problem for a lot of our patients looking for donor sperm. And so because the risk is really minimal, it's zero, close to zero, and because of the fact that it's, was often extraordinarily expensive to find, or almost impossible, depending on backgrounds, to find the donors they were looking for, we just have you sign a release form, a consent form, that you understand there's near zero risk, but you still know for it.
Right.
So we can use CMV positive sperm if you want.
Okay.
And then, are we using, obviously probably not for the home ones that you've done recently, but you were using sperm bank sperm?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I would say is, y'all just process all of this, since it's been a lot of discussion today. And then come in for ultrasounds with me. Before we would do a transfer, Malia, we'd also do a saline ultrasound like we did on Holly to make sure you don't have any polyps too.
Okay.
But we'll just start with the regular ultrasound for now. Just
Okay.
anything. And then, I think just kind of setting everything up this month for how we want to move forward in the new year here.
Okay. And then as far as I know you mentioned something about your financial team or whatever. Yeah. Would the price be about the same doing reciprocal, or would it be a little cheaper if we just used mine and then transferred?
It's
to
not
both?
a huge difference because it's like a retrieval and a transfer, so it's not hugely different. I mean, needing to do an extra SIS or needing to do an infectious disease panel on both of you because of it, but beyond that, it's not
Is there different vials we should be looking at? Because how many vials do we
We've
have?
got 3 vials left, and they're all IUI vials.
So are those, is that something?
IUI vials are actually more sperm than IVF vials. We need fewer sperm for IVF, so that's probably fine.
Okay.
All right, super nice to meet you both, and I look forward to working with you. Okay.
All right.
Same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.
Oh, how you feel?
I feel better with her than I ever did with Dr. Gentry.
Yeah.
I'm just so mad.
It's okay, honey. We can't think about what's already happening. We just have to look forward.
Just he told me one thing and like
All right, y'all. Thanks a lot for stopping by and watching this video. Do us a favor, go and like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to ring the bell.
now, kid.
Oh, you are the air I breathe.